There are many different ways to preserve food, to put your food up. And I'm going to show you one of the ways today that I do my food preservation, which is freezing. Not everybody has a food dehydrator. Not everybody has a freeze dryer. Not everybody has the time or the knowledge to do canning. So freezing is a good option if you don't have those other means to do things. I do a little of all of it. I don't have a freeze dryer, but I do dehydrate many things that I bring in from the garden. Today, though, is a freeze day. I'm doing vegetables and meats. I went to the grocery store, which I do from once a month to once every 3 months. I don't go very often in between. And when I go, I buy vegetables or meats in bulk. Now, I have a garden and I grow a lot of vegetables, but there's some things that I don't grow, so I will pick them up in bulk and store them. So today is freezing. I have done a video before that I did do freezing, and I showed some of this method, but it was not in detail. And it seems like a lot of people like that, but have a lot of questions. So I wanted to elaborate today and show a little more detail of how I freeze certain vegetables. There's a lot of people out there that believe you need to blanch everything. I'm not one of those believers. However, there are some things that do need to be blanched. I don't blanch my okra. I don't blanch my squash. I don't blanch my tomatoes. I freeze them in a pan. Some people call it flash freeze. I'm not sure that is a correct term. It might be, but I know there is equipment, professional equipment to flash freeze. However, freezing is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to show you how I do it. I find this works very well for me. It saves me time, so on the end, when I go to cook, I can pull things out individually. As I've said in a previous video that I've done, I take all of my hamburger meat and I put it in a Ziploc bag and I flatten it out into the square of the Ziploc bag. This makes it easier to store when you can lay all of the bags of meat in the freezer flat. It also speeds up the defrost when you need to thaw it out. It takes very, very little time to thaw out. I squeeze out all of the air bubbles and zip it up. I buy the long chubs from Sam's. I think they are 10-pound chubs. I like buying those because they're clear. You can see through the packaging, so you can see the meat that you're buying. They're so much easier to stack than packages of hamburger meat the way that they're sold. Plus, your bags are a lot thicker than those plastic wraps they put on hamburger meat, and you have less chance of something in the freezer puncturing the bag or with it getting freezer burn. That's the way I like to do it. It works out really well for me. I've already got all of my stuff cut up for this video. I have more to do, but I'm out of pans, so I'm going to do it in stages, and when this stuff is frozen, I will take it out, bag it, and put the next batch in. But let me start with the first pan. This pan is tomatoes. I cut them up into dices and I lay them out individually in a pan, and I cover with a sheet of wax paper or parchment paper. Then you can put another layer on top of that, and then more paper, however many layers you can get in the pan that you're using. But for this pan and for this demonstration, I just have one layer. Those things can go into the freezer, freeze individually, and then you bag them and they're loose. And when you need them for cooking, because this is not going to work for fresh tomatoes, fresh eaten tomatoes, but when you go to use them, whether it's for sauces, to make, right then, or to do canning later, you can pull out however many you want. They're loose. In this pan, I have put up carrots. And I just spread them out in a thin layer, not too thick. And I put a piece of wax paper over it. For my next batch, I have more to do, but I'm not going to do all of it for this video. I will put more carrots on top with wax paper. I will take them out, and you just do this to the pan, and those things will break away from each other and can be bagged loosely. And frozen carrots are good. I like to have frozen carrots on hand when I don't have time to can them, and I will put them in the freezer and use them for, soups, stews, chicken and rice, or whatever, meal you're going to use cooked carrots in. In this pan, I have celery cut up. A thin layer. Some lay on top of each other, but you don't want it packed too high. That's why I do it in layers, because they will stick to each other. So I've got celery here, wax paper, and then more celery can go on top, and then a new layer of wax paper. I already have my okra cut up, and it's already in the freezer before I started doing the video, so I don't have that as an example. But I'm going to move down. Down here is meat. I have 2 pans of pork chops. I think it's 14 pork chops. And since I'm out of pans now, flat pans, I'm going to do these in stages, because I have another large family pack of probably 12 to 14 as well. But the pans are so shallow I can't stack them. But I have all of my pork chops laid out separately, trying not to touch, because if they freeze together, you're going to have to break them apart. It is kind of important to not let them overlap. They can touch just a little, but don't let them overlap or they will freeze together. But when you take them out of the freezer, you can just snap them apart and put them loosely, and then that way you can fill a bag. But if you only want to cook 2 pork chops, you don't have to thaw out the whole bag. So over here is chicken. I have 17 pieces of chicken breast in here, layered between wax paper. So I bought several packs of chicken, and it all works the same way. Freeze individually. Put them in a 1-gallon Ziploc bag, but when it's time to cook, I take out only what I need, and they are not all mushed together. Here are the packs of hamburger meat that I roll them out thin and flat, and then they stack in the freezer like this, rather than that big long 10-pound chub that I bought. Takes up a lot less space, and it thaws out super quick. I ended up, out of that 10-pound chub, I got 6 bags. They're about 1.5 pounds each for my particular meals. I brought in some squash. These are scalloped or patty pan squash. I will cut these up into just small, bite-sized chunks. I will pre-bread these before I lay them out on a cookie sheet, and I will freeze these as well. And then that way, when I'm ready to fry them, I will take out pre-breaded that is only the amount that I need. And then, squash fries up super quick, so 2 or 3 minutes, I have squash. Same with okra, 2 or 3 minutes. If it's pre-breaded, then you don't spend any time when you're doing your actual meal. It saves time while you're cooking. Now, there are several reasons that I do this that I've already talked about. I save space in my freezer because all those things can stack and take up a lot less space than all that packaging that comes from the grocery store. Plus, the packaging is very thin. And if you buy in bulk enough to store for any length, that plastic wrap is so thin that gets punctured. You end up with freezer burn. And this prevents it because you're putting it in the Ziploc freezer, a bag that is meant to be storing food in the freezer. The next reason that I do this, it takes a little bit of time of my day, a couple of hours to do all of the food that I do. But it saves me a lot of time when it's time to cook. The prep work in itself takes time before you actually get to put that meal into a frying pan or into the oven. So this takes that prep work out of the picture, and so it's a lot quicker if you want to have, whatever you want to have. You just pull it out, it's loose, it's already ready, because those things are just going to freeze separately on the pan and then stay together, and they're going to play nicely in that bag before you are ready to use them. Now, for things like green beans, I personally prefer to can them. I'm not going to freeze them because they come out of the freezer a little on the mushy side, and they don't cook well, in my opinion, the way that I like to cook them. Greens like collards, your brassicas, I will blanch those. If you're going to do this, don't forget to layer and use wax paper or parchment, because those layers need to be separated in order for you to be able to, take them out and bag them up, and they won't be frozen together. I hope this video was helpful. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope y'all have a wonderful day.